Hi, everyone. My name is Brett Jensen, and I'm your host for Breaking with Brett Jensen on WBT-AM and FM. And welcome to Radio 1 Charlotte's Community Mental Health Series in partnership with the Mecklenburg County Alcoholic Beverage and Control Board. This will be a space where you will find hope, resources, and assistance. Each month, we will have discussed topics for you, our listeners, that can affect your overall mental and behavioral health. And joining me today is Mr. Kenneth Smith, President and founder of GraceMar Services. And first of all, Kenny, welcome and thank you for joining me and for our Community Mental Health Series being sponsored by the Mecklenburg County ABC Board.
Thank you, Brent. Pleasure being here.
All right, so let's just start from the beginning and just from the genesis of it all. Can you give us an overview of GraceMar Services and the mission behind your work with the non-custodial fathers here in Mecklenburg County's court system?
Absolutely. So, GraceMar started out in 2009. We're a nonprofit organization. We actually got our roots and start in housing, really helping individuals and maintain their housing during the Great Recession. Fast forward, almost 2 decades later, we find ourselves working with non-custodial fathers who are in the child support system. And it's for a number of reasons. Our main mission is to really interrupt the cycle of poverty. And we find fathers being a pivotal point in really helping us with our mission in interrupting that cycle.
So let's just explain it for maybe some people who aren't quite sure. Non-custodial fathers mean fathers who do not have custody of their children?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's, I'm not gonna say it's typical, but statistically, oftentimes when children are born, most often they end up residing with the mother. And so that has created a situation where most of our fathers, not most, but a good portion of our fathers are living outside of the houses with their children. In fact, 41% of all children in this country right now are born to a single parent household.
So what inspired your focus on this particular subset of, fathers that are still involved in the child support system? So what made you want to focus towards this particular subset?
Yeah, that's a great question because it has a couple of components to it. First and initially, when we first got into this work, my wife and I, Grace, who our organization is named after, we saw that a lot of the programs that were being offered were directed mostly toward women and children. And we just often wondered why men weren't involved or there was no programs out there for men. So that was the initial attraction to this demographic. But then later, when we started doing research and things of that nature, we understood that, especially in our mission of interrupting that cycle of poverty, what a pivotal role that fathers play and how they could be instrumental in disrupting that cycle. So that was the second component. Just really led us down that path. And then finally, when we started engaging fathers, we saw men willing to be vulnerable and say, "Hey, I need help." No one's ever really wanted to help me. So it just has a lot of layers to it, but it is just a great population to work with. The fathers are fantastic, and they are very, very excited about having an opportunity to be more impactful in their children's lives.
Now, with this particular group, the people that you specifically work with, or maybe just in general as a whole, how widespread is substance use or substance abuse among the fathers that you work with?
So it's hard to detect just by seeing fathers. You could see kind of signs, but what I want to lean on is really a part of our intake process. We had 35% of fathers just self-disclose some type of substance use. We're not going to say abuse or substance use. And then we follow that up in this study that the ABC board gave us funding for. And we found that fathers actually use drugs for a number of different reasons. One of the major reasons was coping. That was a coping mechanism for them, for the mental stress that they were going through, and drugs and alcohol became just a coping mechanism.
Well, with all that being said, what kind of resources or support systems and recovery resources does GraceMar provide with these particular participants?
Absolutely. We partner with a number of different agencies. That's not our core competency. Nonetheless, we have organizations, Dr. LaDre Ingram, who was part of this study. She's also a licensed clinical a mental health professional and substance abuse professional. We partner with Rewriting the Ending, Ron Clark, who himself was a individual who had a 21-year substance use history, pulled himself out, and now speaks all over the country about how you can overcome substance use and substance abuse and contribute to society and your children's life in a very positive factor. So we partner with a lot of different agencies to really bring that component into the work that we're doing.
But with drug abuse and drug use, either or, there is a stigma that's attached to that, and a lot of preconceived notions and a lot of stereotypes that are associated with that. So how do you build trust with the participants, even though there's all these stigmas and stereotypes?
Yeah, building trust is the cornerstone of any type of social services program. And I think the best way we do it is we're vulnerable, right? We show ourselves to be vulnerable. We show ourselves to be empathetic and caring, that this is a no judgment zone. We've all had our plights in life and things that we've had to endure. I often tell guys that, hey, my drug of use is food. Right? Food can kill you just as fast as drugs can, right? And so we show ourselves to be vulnerable. We show people that we care. We bring them into a no judgment zone, and we find that to be very effective with the fathers.
So you go out, you help fathers get on the straight and narrow and get off of drugs or other vices in their life, and then they're trying to get a job. How difficult or what kind of barriers do they see while trying to get a job?
Yeah, outside of help, I just want to just preface your question. Outside of helping them, if there's a situation where there's substance use, there are other barriers that we have to help them overcome, like transportation. Some of them actually need child care assistance. Some of them need education for employment. So there are other barriers out there that we also help them tackle, and that they also deal with. But I think your initial question was, what is the stigma that they have to overcome?
Well, I mean, yeah, like what are some of the more common employment barriers that they face? Like, so if you help them with whatever vice they have, whether it's lack of transportation or it's the drug use or alcohol use, whatever the case may be, what are some of the common employment barriers that they face while trying to get the jobs?
Yeah, I hate to say it like this, but substance use sometimes is a barrier, only because, and I'm not gonna say only because, but you still have to be drug tested. And this is one of the things that we often try to help anyone who comes to our agency for help, but we're talking about fathers. Marijuana, I'm gonna use marijuana as an example. Oftentimes people believe because marijuana is legal in a lot of states, not here yet, but if it ever happens here, or even when it happens, you're still going to have that barrier to employment, because it's not necessarily the employer that wants you to have to pass that drug test. You also have to deal with, if it's, for instance, truck drivers, NCDOT. I don't care how legal it is in North Carolina. NCDOT is not going to allow an individual behind the wheel of a 18-wheeler if they test positive. So forget the legality. You also have insurance companies who have to underwrite those organizations. So oftentimes we find the people and the fathers that we deal with often in those types of roles, whether it be construction, whether it be truck drivers, those types of roles, no matter if the drug is legal or not, they're still not going to allow individuals who cannot pass those drug tests into these jobs. And it's more so for a safety issue. Okay. But the second barrier, and probably one that we see most often, is just the skill level and education level. Oftentimes our fathers just don't have the skill or education levels to move into some of these jobs.
So and I know this is, from a personal issue that, I was raised with a single mom and a father that was completely absent my entire childhood until I graduated high school. Yeah. And I know there was always a fight because he was always behind on child support payments forever and ever and ever and ever. Yes. And so does the child support debt or any of that type of stuff, does that have any impact on trying to gain employment at all?
I'm going to tell a sad truth, because this is more anecdotal. We did not measure that in this study, but I'm going to give you some anecdotal. I found in some of the just interactions I've had that a lot of fathers will kind of go underground, meaning they'll work under the table. So it may not allow them to get into a better paying job because they go underground, and so now they're not getting paid what they're worth. Hate to say it, because the employer may know that, hey, I can probably afford to pay a little less. And that's something that's in the system. I also found that fathers, their confidence levels are dramatically reduced when they have that child support debt over their heads. And so they're not as confident to walk into an office and look for the job that they might be qualified for. So though we didn't measure it, there's definitely an impact that you see when a father has to bear that burden of a debt hanging over his head. Absolutely.
So the father decides, okay, I'm going to go get a job. Here's the job I want, or here's the job that I'm interested in obtaining. There's got to be sometimes training and resume building, something like that they have to learn or know how to do. So does your program offer any training or the resume building or anything with the local employers? And how impactful has that been if you guys actually do that?
Absolutely. So that great question. That's actually the cornerstone of our agency. We provide over 2,800 different vocational training programs, most of them leading to some type of industry credential. We have what we call soft skills, which is not only resume building and mock interviewing, but it is also interpersonal skills, just helping individuals how to shake hands and how to make eye contact and how to maneuver throughout a room. And we've placed over 4,000 individuals in jobs in the last 12, 13 years. And we've worked with at least 300 different employers in this marketplace. So we've made at least a job placement with at least 300 different organizations throughout Charlotte, Mecklenburg. So we do offer all of those components to our program. And we've been very successful in helping a lot of the fathers regain employment and be in a position to meet their financial obligations of their child support payments.
You should probably get a contract with CMS to start teaching people how to shake hands, because that is a problem. I love that you teach people how to shake hands, because that people should learn how to shake hands at a young age. So when you say learn how to shake hands, what do you mean by that? Because you just totally grabbed me in on that.
Yeah, I'm not going to say how old you are, Brett. I know how old I am. I'm 57.
We're the exact same age. Same age.
There you go. So there are a lot of things, and we just can't take it for granted because someone's of a certain age that these things were ever taught to them. But I remember coming through school, having home economics class where this was taught. We were taught how to walk up, shake hands, firm grip, look someone in the eye. This was part of school. And so we find that I can't blame a 24-year-old young man that he's not shaking hands properly if no one's ever shown him. So and I say these things because people like you and I, Brett, when someone doesn't do that, believe it or not, there's a judgment in our head, right? And so we're trying to help individuals go out in the world and prepare themselves so they can go get, gainful employment. And you got someone on the other side of the interview desk like myself or you, and this person gives us this little handshake and looks away, and we're like, so it's important because that's the society that we live in. And so individuals need to understand those things are important. They say a lot about you.
So with, things like housing instability, without having stable housing, or, maybe didn't graduate high school, or maybe doesn't even have access to regular health care or anything like that. How do these impact the men that you deal with?
Yeah, so tremendously. And I'm going to go back four 5 years, 2020, we got a grant to do a program with individuals who were formerly incarcerated, who were coming out of incarceration, fathers, actually, men. And we wanted to understand what barriers existed for them to move back into gainful employment once coming out of incarceration. Because a lot of times these individuals come out with some skills, right? I will say this: Mecklenburg County does a fantastic job. They have a lot of skills, trades that you actually learn while you're there. My nephew, who was released from penitentiary prison about 6-7 years, he came out with skills. But here were the three major barriers, and you just named them. The first one was housing. If you don't have a safe, sanitary place to lay your head every night, you would be surprised on the impact that has on your life. The second piece was healthcare. That was the second biggest barrier that they had, because, and again, I'm gonna use my nephew as an example. When he came out of incarceration and he lived in my house, he had severe asthma. But to go get those inhalers, those things are like $100 a month. While he was incarcerated, that was taken care of. So now I come out, I don't have a place to live if I don't have an Uncle Kenny or someplace else to live. And I also have medical things that I have to have taken care of. So those things weigh heavily on an individual just surviving with just basic needs, housing and healthcare. Those are just basic needs for us to function as people. And I think a lot of us just take it for granted, but there's a lot of folks who just don't have those basic things, and it weighs on them.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but does there anything immediately come to mind in terms of how GraceMar maybe helped a very specific individual, either with the healthcare or something like that? Can you give an example about that?
You know, I'm gonna, and I'm sure he's gonna be okay with this, but I brought my nephew up because my nephew became the model, and really is what we look for every time we engage a father. And he's one of the reasons why we started our transitional house. My nephew, I won't say his name, he did 10 years in state prison, and he elected to come live with us. My nephew, I watched everything he went through, and I can see why the recidivism rate is the way it is. I watched him go, or I took him to try to go get a Social Security card 3 times, being told 3 different things. I watched him get a car and go up to the title agency 3 separate times trying to get this car titled properly. I watched him have to pay into a system. I didn't realize this, but when you're on parole, you have to pay a fee for parole. But I watched him, with our support, do everything that was asked of him. Everything. Today, my nephew is a truck driver. He's married. And this is the biggest thing, Brett. My nephew was able to get full custody of his son, who lived in another state. So he is a testament to what a man can do with support. And so he became our model. Like, we know you can do it because we watched our nephew do it. And he was in a place where he knew no one but us. I remember him buying a bike and tying it to the front of my house. And I was like, hey, you can't tie that bike to the front of the house. You got to take it to the back. And just riding that bike to work, just doing everything asked of him. And man, we're so proud of him. And he's a testament to what support can really do for an individual. And so he's probably he's our trophy. He's the guy that anytime we're talking to folks, we talk about him because he did it. And it was because he was willing and he had the support.
So if you're a man and you don't have custody of your children, does this impact any way a man's self-esteem, his self-image, his mental health at all? Does that, or how much should it, or how much does it impact a man's self-esteem, image, mental health?
You know what? I'm gonna you stuck something in there that I'm gonna concentrate on. You said should it, and I'm gonna say it shouldn't. And here's why. In a study that we did prior to the work we did with the ABC board, we found out that a father can have just as much impact on the life of his child or children living in the home or living outside the home. And so that's one thing we try to help them understand. Your presence can be felt. You don't have to be in the house. We prefer, or you would have a greater impact in the house, but you still can be a part of your children's lives. You still can influence and impact how they're going to come out. So that should fill you with a sense of pride, dignity, and willingness to go the extra mile, because though you're not there, you still can influence them. So it shouldn't have an impact in a negative way. It should have a positive impact, knowing that they still have the ability to influence their children.
So a father decides, you know what, I want to be active in my child's life. And even though for whatever reasons, money, jobs, transportation, whatever the case may be, hasn't been there. But now through GraceMar, he's now ready to make that step. How do you help the fathers build those relationships, either with their children or the mother of the children or the co-parents, even though they've been away for a while?
Yeah, and that's a difficult one there for us to do, because it also now requires that we have a willing participant on the other side. But, we do help our fathers. Part of our curriculum, the refined curriculum, we talk about parenting and co-parenting. And we always tell them that, if you want to change the world, you got to change yourself. Right. And so we have, we always talk about look within. All the change that you need to make is right within you. You influence how you move, how you react, and how the world reacts to you. And so, that's one of the things we just try to always teach: inner strength, inner peace, project that. And that partner or co-parent, they will be receptive to that. They will adapt to that. If what you put out, you get back. I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, it's always worked for me, and we've seen it work with our fathers. And I'm going to go back to my nephew. I mean, my nephew was in jail for I'm going to say it, attempted murder. I mean, he made some bad choices. But if you see and met my nephew today, you'd be like, how did this guy, right? He's literally just changed entirely who he is. And the world responds to that. And it was evident when that court said, I think his son is better off with him than the mother. So inner strength, inner peace, work on yourself. You can influence and affect the world around you.
Speaking with Kenneth Smith of GraceMar, I'm just curious, do you think that there are any changes or any type of reforms in that child support system that should be implemented to help, either help the fathers or help the families? Do you think there needs to be any changes in that support system?
Yeah, the first and foremost, the implicit bias, that's just obvious. But I think, and this is something, and I'll give the child support system credit. This is one of the things that they're doing, is they're really trying to create a path where the parents can go to a process. I think it's called, I can't remember the name of the process, mediation. That's what it is, mediation. And the goal in the mediation process is to allow the two parents to come together, to come to some type of agreement, financially, visitation on their own. And then the court only is on the outside should they come outside of that agreement, or one of them breach that agreement. They want the parents to create those relationships themselves, as opposed to the court saying, okay, you come in, you have 3 children, you make this amount of money, this is how much you're going to pay. They want those parents to come together, and they're doing that. So I like that step that they've made. The other thing that they've done, words mean something. They've actually changed the name. It used to be Child Support Enforcement. Now it's Child Support Services. So words mean, people don't realize, but words mean something. So they are definitely making steps in the right direction. Not there yet, but they're making steps in the right direction. And I think those types of things are going to help reform that system, so it's more beneficial to, both parents, but also, most importantly, the children.
How do you define and measure success for GraceMar and yourself when it comes to these services for men?
Well, you know, we have numbers that we have to meet. So we definitely meet the numbers. You know, when a funder funds you, they want to make sure that you're meeting those, meeting the numbers that they've laid out. And we've done that and exceeded that. But I was at a check presentation yesterday, and I you know, the numbers are what they are. But I think success for me is when, you know, I have my nephew and I can tell a story about my nephew. I can talk about RJ, who is having a greater influence and impact with his family and his children. Or I can talk about unifications where a couple has now gotten back together because, you know, of some of the work that we've done. So it's to me, it's, you know, the numbers. People don't need to see the numbers, but they just need to see the stories. They need to see, and it can't just be one or two stories. It has to be a lot of stories, you know. And so I think we're successful because we have a lot of stories we can tell.
So every entity needs help. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you need help from the customers buying your product or help from an outside entity, in such a case of a nonprofit, to help support and fund it. So can you just talk about your partnership with the Mecklenburg County ABC board and the impact that it's had specifically on GraceMar?
Absolutely. They've been a fantastic partner, a thought partner. You know, they have some things that they need to do as it requires, you know, from a legal standpoint, on how they can fund different organizations like GraceMar. But the one thing that I found at the ABC board, that they are really looking to see, how can we have a greater impact? How can we do things just a little differently that is going to move the needle just a little bit? Their willingness to be open-minded about, okay, I see that this fits here, but what if we just moved it a little bit here? Do we get a greater impact and still stay within the guidelines? So I find them to be very receptive to just having a conversation, which I'm not saying is good or bad. It's just different, right? Most funders, you know, oh, give me your application, Kenny, and we're going to review it and we'll see, you know, but they're willing, not doing the application process. I don't want to put that out there, but they're willing to have conversations. Like, we just got declined for a grant that we put in with them, but they were willing to sit down with me for an hour and go over, hey, this is where you made a mistake. This is where you need to do this different. I don't get that every place I go. So I just find them very, very willing to communicate back and forth to ensure that people like myself are able to increase our chances to potentially get funding, but also we're driving and getting the impact we're trying to reach.
So if you could speak straight, if you've got lawmakers and you've got funders and corporations and everything else that's watching this, if you could speak to them directly to help them understand anything about your program, what would you say to them?
I would simply say, sometimes conversations are needed. Sometimes we can't put everything into a rigid box. You know, I always say that there are no straight lines in nature. Men have created straight lines so that we can make more sense of the world. You know, sometimes we got to look at things that are in a circular motion. Sometimes we got to look at things just in a different way. Not good, not bad, but just different. And that's all I always have ever asked of anyone. Just, hey, just, you know, give us a chance to just have a conversation about what is trying to be achieved and see if it fits. And I know that's difficult to do. We're all super, super busy. Like you were talking about how busy you were this morning before we get on the call. And so I appreciate you spending this time with me. But we as a nation, we just got to make more time to talk. We just have to, because it's really the things that is going to make us better if we can just sit down and have conversations with one another.
Well, I mean, this has obviously been a fascinating conversation and one that hits close to home, considering the way I grew up as well. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to create any meaningful change in the community? But, you know, Kenny, they don't know where to start. They don't know where to begin.
Yeah, I often say, you know, find your passion, match it with your talents, create your purpose, you know, and that's where you start, you know, not saying that you have to do what I did, but I worked for free for 3 years. I didn't get a cent for the work that I did, but I think that's what it takes. I just come across so many entrepreneurs that say, hey, what I'm doing now, I did for free, and until someone was willing to pay. So, don't chase the money, chase the work. Do the work, the money follows.
Well, again, seriously, I do want to thank you, Kenny, for joining me today for our community mental health series of partnership with the Mecklenburg County Alcoholic Beverage and Control Board. Kenny, real quick, tell our audience how they can get in touch with you if they want to.
Absolutely. You can visit our website at www.gracemar.org. And again, that's www.gracemar.org. Or you can call us at 704-909-6041. Again, 704-909-6041.
If you know someone who could benefit from the services provided by Kenny Smith, president and founder of GraceMar Services, please see his information right there at the bottom of the screen. And again, in closing, a special thank you to the Mecklenburg County ABC Board for making all of this possible with our partnership and providing this platform for our community and mental health. For more information on the Mecklenburg County ABC Board's community outreach initiatives, make sure you visit mecabc.com.